Hello, y'all, and welcome back. So, we're addressing this objection to Epicureanism, that is, that hedonism is a shallow philosophy. The pursuit of pleasure is a shallow philosophy, right? Now, this is, in some respects, a fair objection. How are the Epicureans going to meet it? The Epicureans meet it by saying it would be a shallow philosophy if we were arguing that you should pursue the biggest pleasures, that the bigger the pleasure, the more worth pursuing it is. But we're not arguing that. We're arguing that you should pursue the best pleasures, and the biggest pleasures are not the best. It may well be that the kind of so-called party pleasures, drinking, drugs, casual sex, like that, are the biggest pleasures, but for three reasons they are not the best. I'll illustrate this by means of a story. Back in 2012, I broke my ankle. I told that story in a previous lecture. I had a surgery where they put a plate and 4 screws into my ankle. I think 3 of the screws, or 2 of them, are still there. And they sent me home with a nerve cap, so my whole leg was numb, no feeling at all. And the surgeon said, stay ahead of your meds because your nerve cap will wear off after 24 hours. Well, the man spoke the truth. After 24 hours, my nerve cap wore off. And despite the fact that I'd stayed ahead of my meds, it felt like I was taking no medication at all. It felt like somebody with no anesthesia was slicing my leg open, breaking my bone with a hammer, drilling this plate and screws in there, and stitching me back up. If level 10 pain is you can't stop screaming, I was at level 9. I was going like that for 2 hours. And eventually I just buckled. I said, we got to go to the ER. So I went to the ER. I said, I was just in just unbelievable pain. I said to the nurse, I'm not trying to score drugs off you here, but I'm in so much pain. She said, no problem. She gave me the strongest painkiller they had, Dilaudid. Ooh, kind of hit my head. I was like, well, I see why people might like this, but it didn't touch the pain. I said, please, I need something else. Bam, another hit of Dilaudid. Whoa, dizzy, lightheaded. Kind of like lifted, didn't touch the pain. I said, I'm so sorry. They ended up giving me 3 shots of Dilaudid, 3 shots of Toradol, an intravenous anti-inflammatory, slow-release morphine, quick-release morphine, Valium for the spasming, and the kicker, because this was 2012, Oxycontin, legal heroin. And they pumped me full of drugs, and I spent the night there. And because it was 2012, and because this is pre-opioid crisis, they sent me home with all of it. Not the Dilaudid, because that's IV only, but they literally sent me home with a shoebox full of pills. And so for a week, about week 10 days here, I was on these drugs which are created solely to create this high, not to get people high, they're to combat pain, but this is opium, right? And this high that's greater than anything you could achieve naturally. And I understand why people get addicted to it. Because the thing about opium is it completely erases pain. All physical pain, but all mental pain. And you don't realize how much regret and anxiety and fear and worry you have kind of worked into the interstices of your brain until this megawatt bulb is just switched on, bam, right in the middle of your consciousness, and you just feel amazing. Like your legacy is secure and you're your best self. Physically, you feel a little bit kind of high, right? Not sort of like you're drifting, not like you're out of control, but you're grounded, you're lucid, you're strong, you're confident, you're happy. And your nose itches. So even today, if I'm like at Walmart or something and I see somebody, their nose itching, I'm kind of like, you know. But after 10 days, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to get addicted. I'm not going to be some opioid addict or something like that. No judgment to those people. I'm sure they have difficult lives. But I said, I'm getting off this. And I lay on the couch for a weekend, and I went through withdrawal, which is maybe the worst experience of my life. All the pain comes back. You feel like you're going to vomit all the time, but you also feel really hungry, so you can't eat, but you can't not eat. You feel cold, so you're shivering, blankets on you, but you're hot and sweating, so you're all sticky and gross and sweaty. Everything seems bleak and pointless and sad. Light outside, it feels like it's dark outside. Even if it's light, the light only feels like it's obscuring a deeper darkness beneath it or something like that. And then after a weekend, it was over. I was done. I was out of it. But the point is, this unnatural high, which human beings have created through these drugs, also brings an unnatural crash. Every high is accompanied by a crash. Now, that was a long way of illustrating this, but let's take a less artificial pleasure. Supposing you take a vacation to Spain with your family, and let's say that you saved up for this and you worked hard. This is not drugs now. This is totally innocuous. What could possibly be bad about this pleasure? Well, here's what's bad about it. as you're in Spain there enjoying this vacation with your family, you're haunted by the knowledge that in 8 days you got to go home. And then it becomes 4 days, and then it becomes 2 days, right? And then tomorrow you're going home, back to the grind, back to school, back to work, back to not Spain. Okay? This doesn't mean that the pleasure itself is necessarily bad. It just means that because it's accompanied by a crash, it's not the best. The second reason that these pleasures are not the best pleasures, these big physical pleasures are not the best, is that they're hard to get. Now, this is true if you look at the pleasure, say, of going on vacation to Spain with your family. You have to save up for that. It's difficult to do something like that. This is also true, not to be crude, but of the pleasures of drugs or drinking or something like that. Drugs might be easier to get than they ought to be, but the thing about drugs and alcohol, the real thing that makes them so pernicious, is that you have to keep taking more and more and more to get the high. The high is elusive. It's hard to get. It's, of course, not hard to get lots of great pleasures like vacations and nice, clothes and cars and houses and so on if you're independently wealthy or you're a billionaire. But you know what's true about being a billionaire? It's really hard to get. It's hard to get there, right? If it was easy, everyone would be there. So these pleasures, these big physical pleasures that you think of when you think of pleasure, say the Epicureans, they are hard to get. The third reason, and this is a very Epicurean reason why these pleasures are not the best, is that they're mixed with pain. They're mixed with pain. Now think about this from a philosophical standpoint. What is pleasure? Physical pleasure involves particles in the world moving in a very rapid and intense way over some part of your body. Now, that might be pleasurable, but another thing that's true about it is mixed with pain. Maybe the most fun I've ever had, or one of the funnest things I've ever done, is back when I was in graduate school, I would go to the Jersey Shore where my buddy had a house, or his parents had a house on the Jersey Shore, and I would play in the waves. And I love just walking out into these big, huge waves, and the waves smack you and they knock you down. These are like 8, 10-foot waves, and you're ground into the surf, and you're pulled out to sea, and you have to swim really hard, and you come back and you're exhausted, and you're all bruised up, right? And you're like, let's do it again. It's so much fun. But the Epicureans say, this fun that you're having is mixed with pain. It's mixed with the pain of being slammed to the ground and pulled out to sea. That's what gives you the rush. Again, it doesn't mean that the pleasure is bad. It just means that it's not pure. Because it's mixed with pain, it's not the best. So, big physical pleasures, these party pleasures, even the pleasures of like nice cars, clothes, stuff like that we think of as pleasures of life, these are not the kind of thing that you should centrally be pursuing as a good hedonist, according to the Epicureans. These are what is known as kinetic pleasures, coming from the word kinesis or motion because of their nature. So what sort of pleasure should you be pursuing?